DJ's Dark Side. Tonight we're going to be reading from Deadly Treats again. This one is called World's Greatest Dad, and it is by Stephen Blackmore. By the time Franklin Delacourt wakes up, he's been dead 6 hours. He's confused, disoriented, wondering why he's naked and surrounded by multicolored candles in the middle of a crypt. He sits up, wobbles a bit, steadies himself on the top of the stone sarcophagus he's been lying on. Yellow light gutters through the room, throwing scattered shadows along the stone wall. The candles are a little unnerving, scented. Vanilla, spice, potpourri. It smells like his grandmother's house. "Dude," someone says behind him, "you have to see this." Franklin looks through the door at a vaguely familiar teenager. Can't quite place him. Pimples, greasy hair, wearing an old army jacket. A cigarette dangles on the kid's bottom lip, his mouth hanging open. After a moment, the cigarette falls to the floor. "What, did he catch fire?" Another teen comes in beside the first, hitching up his pants and zipping his fly, too occupied to notice Franklin. "No, I didn't," Franklin says, freezing the kid mid-step. Apparently the kid hadn't finished outside. A dark stain spreads through the front of his jeans. "You're dead," the second kid says. It takes a second for that to register, and even then it doesn't. Dead? A little wheezy, maybe. Wonders if he's coming down with something. Then his memory kicks in. Who the kids are, robbing the liquor store, guy behind the counter with a shotgun. He looks down at his stomach and sees the massive hole and scatter the buckshot made. That would explain the wheeze, and also what the kid just said. He looks up at them, his face hard. "The fuck did you two do this time?" Franklin's boys are ambitious, crazy, stupid sometimes even, but ambitious. "And you just raise the dead," Franklin says. Just like that. He looks from one to the other. They won't meet his eyes. He turns a dog-eared paperback in his hands titled "Go Satan" in bright red letters that looks like dripping blood. The tagline below it reads, "Learn to pick up girls with the dark arts." "Sorry," Billy says, hands thrust deep in the pockets of his army jacket. "Didn't think it would work," says Jake, still scrubbing his sleeve from the embarrassing stain on his jeans. Franklin flips the pages to a chapter titled "Bring 'em Back Alive! Stuff to Do on the Day of the Dead," and reads a few lines. The book tells him it's a good thing he died on Halloween. He thinks it would have been better if he hadn't died at all. "Whose idea was this?" he says. They both point at each other. Franklin shakes his head. "Fine, whatever. Did you at least think to bring me some pants?" They give each other that, "oh yeah" look when they get whatever they figure out something tricky, like tying their shoes. Franklin shakes his head. "Tell me you at least drove me here." Franklin sits in the back of Billy's broken down Cougar, the body bag from the morgue wrapped around his waist. The Cougar would be a classic car if it wasn't mostly rust with an engine that sounded like a wood chipper. Billy keeps working on it, but it never seems to get any better. "This is what I get for busting my butt to keep you boys out of trouble. Didn't you learn a thing in Sunday school? Like, don't play with the forces of the devil?" "Geez, Dad, we said we're sorry," Jake says. Franklin's a little worried. He's seen movies. He knows how this sort of thing turns out. "I don't even want to know how you did it, but I swear if I get an urge to gnaw on some brains, I'm going to start with yours." The robbery at the liquor store should have gone off without a hitch. Figured it being Halloween, he could walk in with a mask on and no one would bat an eyelash until he was all the way to the cash register. The guy behind the counter had other ideas. Shot Franklin before he could even get his gun out of his waistband. He looks at the garbage cluttering the back seat, finds some rags Billy's been using to clean up oil and gasoline as he works on his car. Better than nothing. He stuffs them into the hole in his stomach. So, what to do now? Well, find some pants, but after that? Franklin's slowly coming to accept being dead. Hard to argue with a 4-inch hole in your gut that doesn't bleed so much as ooze. He looks down at his feet. It's hard to tell in the momentary flash of streetlights going by, but he thinks they might be turning purple. He remembers something about blood pooling. Should he stand on his head for a while? He thinks about what zombies do. They eat people. He knows that much. But he's more in the mood for a Big Mac. He looks at the oily rags holding his guts in. Maybe not. Whatever this is, he's not dead. Not really. What if this is a second chance? A chance to make things better. For him, for his boys. When's the last time you boys seen your mother? They exchange glances. Week ago, Billy says. You don't want to eat her brains, do you? Jake says. No, he says, though the idea did occur to him. I want to make amends. This is an awful bad idea, Dad, Jake says. His finger is hovering over the doorbell to their mom's small one-bedroom bungalow, Alexis in the driveway. Quiet, tree-lined street. Late, but not so late that there aren't at least a handful of trick-or-treaters still out scrounging for the last of the jujubes, or maybe a Snickers. Trust your father, boys. I know what I'm doing. Only he doesn't. He hasn't seen Pearl in over 2 years. He didn't know she'd moved out of her apartment and into a nice part of town. He'd had the boys stop in a Walmart and grab him some clothes, a pair of sweatpants and a hoodie. They didn't have any cash and couldn't figure out a way to hide shoes in Billy's jacket. Standing out here in bare feet, ill-fitting clothes, and dead doesn't give him a lot of confidence, but he'll be damned if he'll let the boys see that. Franklin slaps Jake on the back. Well, go on, do it. Jake sighs, closes his eyes, and pushes the button. A moment later, the door swings open to a man in a polo shirt, chinos, and a wolfman mask yelling, Booga booga! And instead of the trick-or-treat Franklin had ready on his lips, he comes out with, Who the fuck are you? The man pulls the mask off to better see Franklin and spots the boys. Oh, he says, connecting the dots. Looks Franklin up and down. You must be Franklin. Evening, boys. Evening, sir, they say together. Doesn't answer my question, Franklin says, but the man is ignoring him, so he turns to the boys. You never call me, sir. Pearl, the man calls out behind him. It's for you. He steps aside. Come on in. Might as well get this over with. The 5 of them sit in Pearl's living room. Franklin eyes the glass cases full of porcelain figures and beanie babies with suspicion. Wonders about the pastel blue furniture from the Sears catalog. There's no sound but the heavy ticking of a grandfather clock. Pearl looks a little stiff. She's wearing a skirt, a blouse with a high collar and no cleavage, sensible-looking Mary Janes. She's gotten them all drinks. Lemonade, not a hint of vodka. This isn't how he remembers her. Franklin, she says, breaking the long stretch of silence, you're looking good. Oh, don't lie to him, the man next to her says. He turns to Franklin, sticks out his hand to shake. You look like you've been shit through a rhinoceros. Name's Lawrence. Larry to my friends. You can call me Lawrence. Franklin takes the hand, shakes it. He's more confused than when he woke up dead. So, Lawrence says, taking back his hand and wiping it on his chinos, I suppose you're here about the wedding. Wedding? Yes, Franklin, Pearl says, playing with a fold of her skirt. We're getting married. This July. The boys said they were going to tell you. I'm actually kind of surprised you came by, Lawrence says. The boys told us you'd been shot and killed in a liquor store robbery. We thought it was a sick joke, Pearl says. I laughed, Lawrence adds. He puts a proprietary arm around Pearl's shoulders. Look, here's the thing, Pearl says. The boys tell us what you're up to. It's not good. You're deadbeat, Lawrence says. You've done time. You're a bad influence on the boys. Now wait a minute, Franklin says, but Pearl puts a hand up to stop him. No, Franklin. Larry and I are getting married and we're giving the boys a good home. I don't want them seeing you anymore. You're bad for them, the way that you were bad for me. This isn't going the way that Franklin expected at all. Not exactly sure what he was hoping for, but it sure as hell wasn't this. It's gone all wrong before he's even had a chance to start. And the way I hear it, Lawrence says, you're pretty bad for her, especially in the sack. Boys, Franklin says, standing. Cold rage bubbles up inside him. Wait in the car. Franklin comes out an hour later wearing a pair of too tight bicycle shorts and a snow parka. Nothing else of Lawrence's fits, and there's no way Franklin can wear his hoodie and sweatpants. There's too much blood on them. At first he thought he'd have trouble getting into the whole eating brains thing, but once he chewed through Lawrence's skull, the rest was easy. He had a twinge or two about Pearl, but he got over it. He looks up and down the street. The trick-or-treaters are gone. The June Cleaver house is all buttoned up for the night. He wonders what the neighbors will think when they find the bodies. He can hear the steady rumble of Billy's Cougar down the block. Now, why'd they park all the way down there? He gives his answer a second later when the engine revs. The headlights burst to life, and the car beats rubber so it roars down the street. Right at Franklin. The way you kill a zombie, Franklin remembers, is shooting it in the head. He's not sure what a 1968 Mercury Cougar with a 225 horsepower V8 engine driven by a pissed-off teenager will do to him, but he'd really rather not find out. Franklin runs, though he knows it's no contest. He looks behind him, the wood chipper roar of the car on his heels just as the Cougar slams into him, bouncing him onto the hood. The windshield cracks as his head smacks against it. He feels his left arm break, his skull fracture. He's surprised when it doesn't hurt. Then elated. Then pissed off. He grabs a windshield wiper and holds on, turns himself to face the two boys, Billy at the wheel, Jake white-knuckling the dashboard, their eyes wide with terror. That does it, Franklin says. I'm going to give you boys a whooping you ain't never going to forget. He slams his head hard against the broken windshield. The spiderweb cracks widen. He's yelling obscenities. The boys are screaming. The car caroms across the streets, shrieks up a ramp onto the interstate. One or two more punches, Franklin figures. He'll break through the glass and really go to town. He pulls back his fist just as Billy yanks the steering wheel hard to the right. Franklin goes airborne, watches the lights of the Cougar in the distance surrounded by the smoke of breaking tires. He hits the ground, leaving a furrow through grass and dirt as he tumbles like a cannonball. He stops only when he butts up hard against a slab of concrete. He's really done a number on himself this time. His left arm is completely useless, broken in 5, maybe 6 places. Most of his teeth are scattered behind him. His right leg is twisted in an angle that shouldn't be possible. Half his tongue is missing. He pulls himself up anyway, wobbles a bit, steadies himself on the tombstone that finally stopped his flight. He looks around, eyes blurry. He shoves a finger into one of his eyeballs, seating it back into place, and his vision clears. Where are those little bastards? He sees them running from the cougar into the graveyard, running toward the only light in the place, toward the crypt he woke up in. Come on, boys, Franklin says, his voice carrying in the empty graveyard. Daddy's not going to hurt you. Much. His right leg is worse than he thought. It keeps snagging on the uneven ground, tripping him up. He stopped trying to lift it before he got 10 feet. It kept throwing off his balance. The boys run out of the crypt, Billy with a vanilla-scented candle and his copy of Go Satan in his hand, Jake with a bag that's flopping around like it's got a life of its own. That's enough, Dad, Billy says. We brought you back. The least you could have done was not eat Mom. Franklin stops mid-shuffle. Billy's got a point. They did go to a lot of trouble to raise him from the dead. Yeah, he thinks. They hid that their mom was getting married, and they did try to kill him again. But what did he expect? They're still good boys. They mean well. Or Larry, Jake says. Larry was cool. Cool? I'm gonna twist your pea head off your goddamn shoulders, you little sons of bitches, Franklin says. His voice is muddled with only half a tongue, but he gets the point across. Billy starts reciting from the book, shakes the candle around, spins in a circle. Franklin can't understand any of the words, but it sounds important. It dawns on him what his son is doing. Sending him back to the grave. Franklin shuffles forward, dragging his broken leg behind him. He feels a tugging on the back of his mind, his thoughts slipping, vision fading around the edges. He stumbles. Arms and legs go numb. Now, Billy yells. Jake grabs the end of the sack he's holding and flings the contents right at Franklin's head. A wailing shriek echoes off the tombstones. A blur of motion smacks Franklin full in the face. He flails at it, screams, bats it away as it rips long furrows in his flesh. The cat was supposed to be dead, you idiot, Billy says. Dude, I can't kill a cat. Franklin's broken arm is tangled up in the snow parka, but the feeling of fading away, of dying all over again, is gone. He surges forward, tearing the parka off. He's fast for a dead man with a busted leg, and while the boys are bickering, he gets close enough to grab Billy by the arm. Startled, Billy throws the book at Franklin's cat-mangled face, punches him in the gut with the hand holding the candle. Franklin laughs. Until the candle lights the oil and gasoline-soaked rags he'd stuffed into his shotgun wound. The rags erupt. Franklin stares at the sudden flames. By the time he figures out what's happening, the rags are an inferno in his gut. He lets go of Billy, slaps at the rags to try to put the fire out. Instead, the wad loosens, hangs out of the hole. The flames spread to his lycra bicycle shorts. Franklin loses his shit. One thing to have a gunshot wound, broken bones, missing teeth. Something else entirely to have your dick on fire. The air fills with the stink of burnt hair, cooking meat, melting plastic. So focused on the flames, he doesn't notice the shovel coming right at him. He looks awful pissed, Jake says, sitting on top of an abandoned washing machine covered in rust. The dump's not the best smelling place in town, but nobody comes out here. Should have just buried him, Billy says. It's a pretty big jar. They lucked out when they found it. No lid, though. They've got a hubcap on the top to keep the rain out. But this is lots cooler, Jake says. Frank's head sits at the bottom of the jar, jaw working furiously, eyes bouncing around like they're ping pong balls. Up, down, side to side. Irises are milked over, skin a mottled gray. Billy raps on the glass. Franklin's wobbly eyes stop, stare at him in cold, hard hatred. Yeah, he says, lots cooler. Hope you enjoyed.